Lesson 14, Performing Role Transitions. In this lesson, we will discuss about database roles in Oracle Data Guard environment, and also we will discuss about switchover and failover operations, and also some of the considerations. And also you will see how to keep physical standby database sessions during the role transition. In Oracle Data Guard environment, database operate in one of the two mutually exclusive roles. Database can be running either primary or standby. And there are different types of a standby role. It could be physical standby database, or it could be logical standby database. It could be snapshot standby database. So we already discussed about this topic. With the role transition service, you can change a database role from standby to primary, primary to standby. So let's take a look at what's different between switchover and failover in the role transition service. Switchover. The switchover is to change a database role from primary to standby, standby to primary. Switchover always guarantee synchronize the database, and switchover is possible only when primary and standby databases are synchronized the moment when we perform switchover operation. So we typically use a switchover operation for planned role transition. For example, you have a primary database running out of Piscataway, New Jersey, US. Your standby database running out of Seoul, South Korea. And you want to make sure role transition works without having any problem, including applications running out of either primary and standby. So to make sure everything works, you want to test role transition service once every 6 months. So you change the database role, so you can make database running out of Seoul, South Korea as a primary, and also standby database, a primary database running out of Piscataway, New Jersey, US, as a new physical standby database. And then after you test all your role transition and also application, the switchover, then you're going to actually switch back. This is in a planned role transition rehearsal. And also you can use a switchover operation for planned maintenance. So your database running out of Piscataway, New Jersey, and you have a planned operating system and hardware maintenance. So for temporary, you have to shut down primary database. That means it will affect applications running on. Eventually, it will affect your business. So in order to reduce and eliminate business impact, you can switch over to another database. Let's say standby database running out of Dallas, Texas. So the applications will be switched to a new primary database, and we can provide a continuous service. And also another planned maintenance. When you are planning to upgrade your database using database rolling upgrade, so that way you can reduce downtime. As a part of a rolling database upgrade, we will have to switch over database role to complete complete database upgrade for the databases in the data guard configuration. So a switchover, it is to perform planned role transition rehearsal or for the maintenance purpose, and no loss of data during the switchover operation. However, failover, it should be used only in an emergency case, because depending on your data protection mode, you may lose data. And also, failover operation must be initiated, it should be initiated by user. So user initiate failover operation if in place the recovery is not possible. And also, if you want to automate failover operation based on condition, you can also enable fast start failover as well. So failover operation, you have a loss of data depending on your data protection mode. So it should be used after evaluating loss of data, and also after evaluating impact of your the business. So after you perform failover, so how much what is the downtime in the database level? What is the downtime at the application level? What about user impact? So you will have to evaluate that. So it's gotta be an emergency case. And during the role transition, we can leverage a feature called buffer cache preservation during the role change. Suppose that you are managing active data guard standby database, and you offloaded reporting operation. So reporting operation requires scanning of a table and blocks cached in memory. Now, because of a switchover, when you change the database role, your standby database becomes primary database. The previous version, when you change the database role, all the blocks that were cached in the standby database, they had to be flushed out. So when user connecting to new primary database, this users must request the database blocks from the disk and cache into the memory. So until new primary database memory is warmed up, there's a little bit of a performance issue. So we have a buffer cache preservation feature. So in the current version, during the role transition service, the blocks will be retained. And also we have the associated topic. By using standby DB preserve state, during the role transition, we can keep sessions that were connected to original physical standby database even after changing database role. So to do so, you can set it to session, or you can set it to all. Or if you want to keep buffers even after changing database role, then you can use a buffer option or all option. So we have two possible options. I'm going to show you one handout so that way you can learn better just from the diagram. Okay, so I brought up my handout here. In 12.2, standby database preserve state init parameter was introduced. The idea was before role change, we could offload reporting operation to standby database. So all the sessions request blocks and cache those requested blocks in memory and then return output. But if a role transition service request comes, then your standby database becomes primary database. By setting standby DB preserve state, we can maintain same sessions without disconnecting. and that's a nice feature. However, take a look at memory. These 3 sessions cache the 3 blocks in this particular example. However, after role switch, even though we could retain sessions, but we lost the blocks. And that was a 12.2 behavior. But 18C, we enhanced this area. In 18C, after database role gets changed, sessions still remain same, and we can also retain the blocks. Okay, so 3 blocks cached in the active data guard, and same blocks retained even after it becomes the primary database. So this is a pretty cool feature. So if new sessions connect to primary database for insert, update, delete, and we can take advantage of pre-warmed memory. So this is a very nice feature. So I will come back to slide. Okay, so let's continue to switchover. Switchover, it is to change the database role, primary to standby, standby to primary. Switchover requires no resetting of online redos of a new primary database and no data loss, okay, during the switchover operation. So let's take a look at diagram that give you switchover, before switchover, and after switchover. In this example, I have a Boston database in here, and we have a London database in the bottom. And primary database and standby database communicate each other and redo shipping from primary to standby database. And since the primary database is open in read-write mode, application A, it makes transactions against the primary database. Application B is a reporting application, so it connects to standby database to do reporting operation. But after database role gets changed, this time application connects to new primary database, which is a London database. Application B is a reporting application, so it uses a connection to London database, in this case Boston database, which is a new physical standby database. So as a part of a database role, application must be failed over to the right location as well. We have automatic failover and also automatic session failover, so that's an application level failover or application level switchover. So we can use fast connection failover feature, or we can use TAF, transparent application failover. We can also use application continuity feature. Okay, so by using that, application can be switched over to new database role or failed over to new database role. So how to perform switchover operation using Enterprise Manager? We visited DataGuard administration page a couple of times. In the standby databases section, we select the target primary database, and then we're gonna click switchover so we can change the database role. And also, when you actually click switchover, it will show you a confirmation page. Are you really sure to perform switchover operation? So you can click yes to move on to next step. So in the next page, you will have to wait until switchover is done. Progress bar is giving you current status of a switchover operation. So Enterprise Manager can give you this kind of information. I made one practice activity in this area, so I'm going to actually show you practice activity that is related to this topic. Okay, so I'm going to show you practice 14-1 It is to perform switchover operation. I think this is not, I covered it yet, but 14-2. Let me show you 14-2. Practice 14-2, it is to practice keeping physical standby session connected during role transition. So what we're gonna do, using Enterprise Manager, we're gonna access to primary database. And also, in order to manage a standby database, you also have to register a London database as a target of the Enterprise Manager. So in the database page, you click Add an Oracle Database. Then it will show you, the list of hosts where London database is running. So in this case, host 03 and select. And then you're going to provide monitor username and password. In real environment, you may want to use DB SNMP. But in my practice environment, I go with the sys user as a sysdba, because there are certain operations that require sysdba privilege, and eventually save and close it. Finally, you will have a London database, and it takes a minute or 2 minutes to to register London database, and also to keep status normal. So you're gonna change it, auto refresh to 30 seconds, and wait until London standby database becomes normal. And then what we're gonna do, in the Boston database page, you're gonna go to Data Guard Administration, or if Data Guard performance, the administration page doesn't appear under availability, then you can use add standby and cancel. So that's what you can do, and you provide a database sys user's password. So finally, you are in the Data Guard homepage. You see the primary database status, it's normal, and standby database, it's normal. And then you will log in as a sysdba, and then you will check standby DB preserver state, and it is a session. So this is a static parameter, so you have to restart database to apply, meaning that during the role transition, I want to keep this the session. So we're gonna actually start MRP process. Looks like in this practice environment, Boston database is a physical standby database at this point. Let me double check here. Yes, so your primary database is a London database, and also Boston database is a physical standby database. In practice 14-1, you will practice the switchover. That's why you have now this state different database role. Boston now is a physical standby database. In the physical standby database, you're gonna set standby DB preserve state session. And then what we're gonna do, we are going to make OE user session. Okay. So we have one session exists here, and then you're gonna switch over to Boston database, and you provide all required information, and you wait until switchover is complete. Now we're gonna check OE user session. During the switchover operation, your session still exists. At some point, your session will hang. Okay. This is my mistake. In your real eKit, you will see same serial number. In my case, I tested a couple of times and captured a couple of times, so that's why I have output from 2 different results. But your case, same SID and serial number will appear. So in my case, this is a document bug. So you will see the same session still remain in the current database, and even after switchover is complete. Okay, so that's what you're gonna see, because we requested keeping session even after switchover. So as you can see, we didn't lose connection and session. So session was remained, and we didn't have any problem. But when you look at practice 14-1, you will see that without any parameter setting, by default, during the switchover operation, your existing session will be disconnected. That's what you're gonna see as a part of a practice 14-1. Okay, so practice 14-1 and practice 14-2, you will see two different observations. Now I'm gonna come back to slide. Okay, so now let's see how we can perform switchover operation using data guard broker command line interface. Before performing switchover operation, we can validate the readiness of a switchover. So we can validate database for switchover readiness. So when you run validate database London, it will show you whether database is currently ready for switchover or not. So in this case, yes. So you can actually switch over to London database because the London was ready for switchover operation. So you can wait for completion. At the end, you will see that switchover succeeded. New primary database is London. Now it's very simple. If you are using Enterprise Manager or data guard broker command line interface, switchover operation is a pretty simple work. But if you have to do same thing using SQL, then you will have to do more operations. For example, as a part of a preparation, you will have to check database role, and then you will have to check $v archive dest status to make sure there is no log archive destination related issue. And then temporary files exist on the standby database to match temporary files on the primary database, and delays in applying redo on the standby database that will become new primary database are removed. Makes sense? Active data guard is stopped for fastest possible role transition. Any user sessions connected to physical standby database are cleanly terminated prior to switch over. But this is default behavior, but we can control this behavior. Okay, as a part of a practice of 14-2, that's what you're gonna see. Now, consideration. Now, before that, so we have performing a switchover by using SQL. We have a SQL command that is corresponding to validate database command. So we have alter database switchover London verify. If it returns database altered, that means your London database is ready. And then you're going to alter database switchover to London and open the new primary database, mount new physical standby database, start read apply service. With the data guard broker interface or by using Enterprise Manager, these steps are a lot more simpler. Validate database and switchover. That's it. With the Enterprise Manager, select target, hit switchover button. That's it. So it's your preference. You can perform switchover operation using SQL, using data guard broker, command line interface, or by using Enterprise Manager. So we have considerations when performing switchover to logical standby database. Logical standby database is an independent database from primary database. DB name is different. Your physical standby databases that share same DB underscore name. So your physical standby databases are databases of your current primary database. When you switch over to logical standby database, your physical standby database will be disabled because your existing original physical standby database, it was from the original primary database, not from the new primary database, which was a logical standby. So you have to recreate physical standby database. So switchover operation does not cause a shutdown of a primary database instance. Although there is no need to terminate user sessions, termination is recommended. Logical standby database may not have all data. Switchover to a logical standby database invalidates and disables all physical standby and snapshot standby databases in the broker managed data guard configuration. Other logical standbys in the configuration will become standby of a new primary database. So logical standby database is fine, but not for the physical standby database. Okay, that's why when you perform switchover operation, it's best practice to pick physical standby database, and that is synchronized with the primary database. When you pick logical standby database as a new primary, then you have to recreate existing physical standby databases. And situations that prevent switchover. Switchover operation, it always checks synchronization only when primary database and standby database are synchronized. Then we can initiate switchover. When you initiate switchover and Oracle detected the synchronization issue, then switchover operation will be stopped. So if archive read log files are unavailable, thus standby cannot be synchronized with the primary, or point-in-time recovery is required, primary database is not open and cannot be opened, then your switchover operation cannot be initiated. And also, failover operation. The failover is also same, is changing database role. However, it is an emergency case. If there is any site failure, disaster scenario, then failover operation may be appropriate if in-place backup-based recovery is not possible. However, if your problem is just a temporary temporary storage problem, and you have a spare disk and storage can be fixed pretty quick, then failover is not failover. We don't have to perform failover operation. Just in-place recovery will be more than enough. Okay, so we have to make a right decision when performing failover operation. Types of failover operations. We have a complete failover, immediate failover. Complete failover means wait until all available redo on the standby database. So wait until we apply all available redo on the standby database. Immediate means don't apply available redo, just immediately perform role transition, so that way we can quickly provide a service for the application and also for your business. However, you will have a loss of data if your the reader transfer mode is async mode. And also fast start failover, it invoked automatically by the data guard broker based on condition. Failover considerations. All the primary database is disabled from the primary from the data guard configuration, and data loss is possible. And failover should be used only in an emergency case. When choosing standby database to failover to, you should choose physical standby database when possible. Choose the standby database that is the most current. Okay. Now, for the first two bullets, I will use whiteboard to give you a little bit of information about first two bullets. Okay, so I'm in the whiteboard. Suppose that I have a primary database. So we have a primary database. And also we have a standby database. Primary database is a Boston database. And standby database is a London database. And also, we have reader transfer service. And suppose that this is async mode. Okay. So we have asynchronous reader transfer service for maximum performance data protection. So in the primary database, we commit transaction at system change number 1000, and this will be transported, and this will be applied in the London database. Because it is asynchronous, we may commit more in the primary database, and there may be a little bit of a delay. Okay, so we have 1001, something like that. So we have a reader for committed transaction at 1002. It was written to online reader logo file. Now we are about to transport this redo to standby database asynchronously. Okay, at this time, when you perform role transition service because of site failure, because of various issues, so your London database is a new primary database, and your standby database, your new standby database will the new standby database now is a Boston database. So here's one thing. So this the redo shipping is now opposite way. So this is gone, this is gone. So we should be able to transfer redo the other way around. But the problem here is your new standby database, it has a more redo applied, 1002. So from here, new database, when we actually make changes at 1002 and you commit at 1002, this cannot be consumed by new physical standby database. Why? Because we have a same redo at the same system change number. That's why your new standby database, it becomes disabled initially. Okay, because we have a redo committed at 1002, and it is transported back to a new standby database. Oops, we have already applied the redo at 1002. So what we have to do is we have to clean up 1002 to keep your new physical standby database is synchronized with the new primary database. So in order to flash back, what we're gonna do is we're gonna issue reinstate command, reinstate database name. So when you use DataGuard broker command line interface, reinstate command performs flashback operation to resynchronize this new physical standby database with the new primary database. So reinstation is needed. So reinstating a new physical standby database that is required to be able to register and also to be able to enable disabled original primary database. So that's one thing what you have to know. So let's come back to slide. So how to perform failover operation using Enterprise Manager. Enterprise Manager, there's a button called Failover. Choose your new primary database and click Failover. And then you have two options: complete failover, incomplete failover. Complete failover, it wait until all available redos are applied. Immediate failover means instead of applying all available redo, fast failover is the highest priority. Just immediately change the database role. And then we're going to wait for progress of a failover operation. And after failover operation, you will see new physical standby database status. Status is database must be reinstated, meaning that synchronize new physical standby database with the primary database. So internally, you can actually perform flashback. So when you click this link, it will give you option to reinstate, and that performs flashback operation in the background. If you want to perform failover operation in the command line interface with the data guard broker command line interface, you type failover to standby database, which will become new primary, and you have a command without immediate and with the immediate option. And then we're going to reset data protection mode and reinstate or recreate the former primary database to resynchronize former primary database with the new primary database. And reinstate or recreate other disabled standby databases in the configurations. Okay, so we have a reinstate command here. Reinstate database, database name. And it will invoke flashback database in the background. After reinstate, after resynchronizing the new physical standby database, finally you will enable new physical standby database. So your data guard broker will manage and will monitor re-enable the database. Okay, so we have a quiz here. The database buffer cache state is now maintained on an active data guard standby during a role change. Yes, absolutely true. I missed the previous page. After failover operation, the old primary database is removed from the data guard configuration and must be recreated from a backup. No, we can simply, it will be disabled. However, it is not removed. So we can simply reinstate old primary database and then reinstate the new physical, which is your old primary database. So that's it. So we can easily resynchronize original primary database as a new physical standby database. Okay, this is a lesson 14. Practice 14-1, performing switchover. In this practice activity, we will use data guard broker command line interface to perform switchover. The first step is you get into host 01 and using dgmgrl command line interface, you connect to Boston database. And before performing switchover, make sure your data guard broker configuration is normal. Okay, so all members of a cluster, actually all members of a data guard configuration is good. Now we're going to validate Boston database to see switchover is possible or not. Validate database verbose Boston. So as you can see, the Boston database is ready for switchover. But what about the London database? And London becomes new primary database. So let's see if London is ready for switchover. Okay, so as you can see, the London database is also ready for switchover. And then we're going to locate host 03, and you're going to set environment variable for London. In order to compare session state during the role transition service with the current practice and next practice activity, we're going to check one init parameter in the physical standby database. So standby DB preserved state is none. That's a default value. And make sure the real-time query is enabled in the physical standby database, so you can offload real-time query to physical standby database. So assuming that you have an application running in the physical standby database for real-time query, and at this time you are testing switchover operation, then what will happen? So you're going to switch over to London. And it does perform a series of operations. So first of all, it connects to London database, and also it will make London database as a new primary database. And also, operation requires startup of instance Boston, so your Boston database will be restarted. And starting new physical standby database. And then finally, we're going to keep the London database as a physical, new primary database, and Boston database as a new physical standby database. And these are the steps internally performed to complete switchover operation. So in the current state, it's in the process of restarting Boston database. The current state is a mount state. And switchover succeeded. And let's check configuration of a data guard broker. Okay, so I got this error message, but this is temporary error message. So after waiting for 10 seconds to 30 seconds, the configuration status come back to normal. So just wait a couple of seconds and then rerun it. Eventually it will come back. So I added the message here. It will take few minutes or few seconds to clear up the warning messages. Show configuration one more time. Finally, it came back to normal, meaning that your London database becomes new primary database, and Boston database, it becomes new physical standby database. Now, here's a very important part that we will have to check. What about your session in the original physical standby database? Okay, we had the original session here to physical standby database. Can I keep this session? So when you run a query here, I'm gonna run same query here, select open underscore mode from database. As you can see, we lost the session, meaning that during the switchover operation, we couldn't keep the existing session that was connected to original physical standby database. That's the default behavior. And then I'm going to exit out. And from host 03, I'm going to use DG mgrl and connect systemdg oracle underscore for you at London, and let's switch log file. So we're gonna switch we're gonna switch logo file in the new primary database. So redo and archive logo file is shipped over to new physical standby database, which is a Boston database. We're gonna check transport leg and apply a leg of a new physical standby database, which is Boston database. So as you can see, everything came back to normal. This is the practice 14-1. Practice 14-2, keeping physical standby session connected during the role transition. In this practice activity, you can think about this practice as a continuation from previous practice activity. We switch it database role, making London as a new primary database. In practice 14-2, we're going to switch back to original state. At this time, we're going to observe physical standby database connection to see whether we can keep this session during the role transition service or not. Especially, we're going to use one init parameter for this testing: standby db preserve state. And also, we're going to use an enterprise manager for switchover. So that will be another practice testing. The very beginning, we're going to start enterprise manager. So we discussed how to access to data guard homepage. So we use the same technique. I'm going to double click Firefox web browser, and I'm going to type address https em13c example.com em. Okay, so that's my enterprise manager homepage. I will access to Boston database because this is database registered explicitly. So that's my Boston database. So let's see here. According to this, okay, so I moved one step ahead. So I'm supposed to be database page. So what we're gonna do, since current primary database is a London database, rather than using boston.example.com link, we're gonna register London database as a enterprise manager target. So we're gonna click add the button and Oracle database, and London database is running out of host 03. And then we're going to move on to the next page. It will discover database target running out of host03.example.com. You will see London 2 and London as well. But for this practice activity, we don't need a London 2, so we will only register London. So here we have a london.example.com. I'm going to register this London. And also we have a listener, so we can also register listener as well. But main focus is london.example.com. And also you can use the DVS and SNMP to limit the privilege. By default, DVS SNMP user account is locked, so you have to unlock to use it. But in my case, to simplify this process, I will log in as a sysdva, and you provide the password, and you can test it. And test was successful. So we're going to move on to the next page. So eventually we're going to register London database as an enterprise manager target and listener as well, and we're going to save it. So once everything is done, in the database page in enterprise manager 13c, we're going to see London as a target of an enterprise manager. Okay, this is done. And when you close it, it will come back to this page. Right now, the registration is in progress. So what you're going to do, you will have to wait, a few seconds until this London database becomes normal. But it's still in progress. So let's come back to manual. So your manual will give you all this kind of information. So you select host 03 and also provide a password for either DB SNMP user or password for sysdb user. And then we're going to save the information requested, and then we're going to close it. And also, step number 7, that's where we are. Your London database will appear. However, you will have to wait until your London database becomes normal. So I'm waiting right now. During the registration of a London database, when you look at DataGuard homepage, you will see the incomplete status of a London database. So it's better to wait at this stage. As you can see, my London database, which is a new primary database, is now up and running correctly. We've been access to Boston database, so I'm going to use the same Boston database here. It doesn't matter whether you go to Boston or London. Anyway, you can access to DataGuard homepage. And when you go to availability, and you either have a DataGuard administration or only add a standby database. And I pointed out a couple of things in this area. If you don't see DataGuard administration, you simply click add a standby database, and it will redirect to DataGuard homepage. So in my case, I already have DataGuard administration page. I can click DataGuard administration. It will show you current status of a DataGuard configuration, which is a good, normal, and London as a primary database, and Boston as a physical standby database. So that's what we can see. Now, the reason why I registered London database is because I want to perform switchover operation through Enterprise Manager, because we haven't tested through Enterprise Manager. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna actually prepare one session before performing switchover. So what we're gonna do here is I will open up SQL, the actual terminal window, and on host 01, which is your physical standby database location, and you set environment variable and login as the sysdba. And then we're gonna check one init parameter, show parameter standby db preserve state. So current state is none. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna change this parameter to session, meaning that during the role transition service, preserve session that is connected to physical standby database. So when physical standby database becomes primary database, your session still remains the same. So that is the purpose of this parameter with the session value. Since it is a static parameter, we will have to shut down, immediate, and then we have to restart. Okay, so let's make Enterprise Manager a little bit smaller. So that's my EM, and that's my terminal window. And then I will start up. And then we're going to check status of pluggable databases. So it is a mount state. So we're going to open pluggable database, read-only mode. So you can double check if you want. So read-only mode. And also internally, the read-apply service comes up automatically, but you can also initiate starting up of a read-apply service. So at this point, as you can see, it was already up and running. And then we're gonna exit out. Now we're gonna establish a session for simple testing. So we will use a SQL plus OE Oracle underscore for you at host 01 1521 and dep1.example.com. So show current name. My current location is dep1. The current user is OE user. That's my session. And also I can use the context function to return the session information. So I will use formatting and also display my current session information. So my current session ID, the session ID is 16 and serial number is 41975. So that's what it is. So when you actually run it, I still have the same information. And then what we're going to do, we're going to perform switchover operation. In the standby database list, you choose a new primary database, and then you click switchover. And then you will have to provide the credential information. We're going to choose preferred credential. That's what we're going to do. So in my case, London database is a primary, and Boston database as a physical standby database right now. And I'm going to click switch over. Okay, so I got some message here. I will click one more time. Write failed. Okay, so it should work. So in this case, what I'm going to do, I will come back to target database page, and I will click Boston database. What happened? Oh, this makes sense. Availability, data guard admin. If it doesn't work, I will just log out, log in again to see if we can resolve a problem. So I'm in the boston.example.com and switch over. So you should move on to next page. Okay, so finally, so I was able to see the login page. So the error message, that was a temporary message. So if you encounter same error message, you simply come back to databases page, and then click Boston database again to retry. And then we're going to move on to continue. And you will also have to provide the credentials information for host 03. I will use preferred Oracle. And also in the confirmation page, you will have to click yes. But before that, make sure your session still exists. And I will click yes. So now it's moving. So while the switchover operation in progress, you will keep running same session information. So my session still exists, no problem, and still running. But at some point, you will see that your SQL statement is pending. I believe that is the time when the role is changed. So your session becomes pending for a few seconds. But once the switchover is done, then your session will resume, because we changed the init parameter to session to retain session in the original physical standby database, which will become new primary database. So my session is pending, but there is no error message yet, and session is retained. So this is what user going to see from user perspective. And if you have a long-running reporting query, waiting time is only a small amount of time. So let's say you have a reporting query that takes about 10 minutes, waiting 20 seconds, that will be only a small amount of time. As you can see, my session information came back. SID is the same, serial number is the same. Okay, so I keep running same SQL statement. I'm running this. I have the same session number. So after waiting about 30 seconds, it returns the same session information even after changing the database role. Look at this. So all same. And according to Oracle document, it doesn't support for long-running query. I don't know what is the definition of a long-running query, but at least in this simple testing, we see expected behavior from the result. Okay, so let's come back to Enterprise Manager. As you can see, switchover completed. So even after switchover complete, my session still remain same. So your primary database is a Boston database. Your standby database is a London database. So a physical standby database. And my session still remains same in the new database role without having any problem. So that's what we checked. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to exit out of a SQL Plus. And we received the switchover completed successfully message. And this is our one simple testing. And I wanted to show you one the init parameter setting. In the practice 14-1, we did the switchover, but we couldn't retain a session. So we lost the session during the switchover. However, this time we changed the init parameter to keep session even after changing database role. And we tested, it worked. So this is a simple testing for the new feature. This is a practice 14-2.